What's going on, guys? In this video, we're going to talk about Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, more specifically, training in multiple disciplines. Check it out. Okay, so I currently teach Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu at my school. My school is called Rad Muay Thai, but we do have striking and grappling. This is because these are the two martial arts that I have fallen in love with and that I've trained for many years and that I choose to teach. Owning a school or academy that teaches two different martial arts, or two or more, because we do have boxing and kickboxing, but those, as far as I'm concerned, those kind of go in line with Muay Thai, so they're subsets of a primary striking style. But what you see sometimes is you see specific groups of people. So you have people who specifically train Muay Thai, and then you have members who specifically train Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and then you have people who train both. When you talk to the Muay Thai students about trying out the grappling classes, what you get is a reaction that's along the lines of, they're already a bit overwhelmed with all the technique and details that they have to that they have to pick up and learn as far as the striking, that the thought of taking on another martial art that's potentially even more complicated or complex at a glance is just too much to really even consider. I started like 12 years ago with just going to an MMA gym. And of course, as an MMA gym, they had boxing, kickboxing, cardio kickboxing, Muay Thai, MMA, wrestling classes, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, no-gi, as they should offer. It's an MMA gym. So it was overwhelming, but I wanted to get every piece of information I could, so I was jumping into every single class. Eventually, I had to decide what I was going to drill my attention down to so that I could become really good at a couple things and not just mediocre at everything. What I learned early on was that I was not a wrestler. I had not wrestled. I'm not one of those guys that wrestled all through my childhood. And when I was grappling, I was getting pretty much dominated by wrestlers. So I decided that I was just going to get really good off my back and just really put a lot of my attention into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So for a time, I actually, when I started competing in BJJ, I actually stepped away from striking altogether for a little bit. And then I really drilled into my grappling and my Jiu Jitsu. After a while of doing that, and my skills were getting honed, I wanted to up my striking because I started to kind of see that fall by the wayside. I started initially with jumping into my boxing more because I wanted to get nice with my hands. So I started working with the boxing coaches and putting a lot of time and effort into really stepping up my boxing. But I come from traditional martial arts. You know, I've good kicks, and I was initially doing Muay Thai, and so I wanted to get back to that. Muay Thai programs in MMA gyms aren't often straight up Muay Thai programs. It's like a weird striking style. So at our gym at the time, American Top Team here in Colorado, we switched the name to Striking for MMA in an effort not to disrespect any particular style, because it wasn't boxing, man, and it wasn't Muay Thai. It was striking specifically for MMA. So I ended up finding another coach or master that I was training under that I was about an hour away, and I started doing Muay Thai over there with him, specifically traditional Muay Thai. I fell in love with Muay Thai as a striking art, letting all the other striking options fall by the wayside because I found Muay Thai to be just the more efficient striking style. You had more options, you had all 8 limbs, all 8 points of contact, the fists, the elbows, the knees, the kicks, the striking was just more powerful. After trying them all, I just decided that Muay Thai was what I really wanted to become good at as far as my striking style, as far as being on my feet. So I continued to train in that specifically as far as my striking. Of course, sprinkling in boxing and keeping all that stuff as accessories to, again, make my Muay Thai better. I went to Thailand, trained there for a while, and then I ultimately, and at the same time, still training my Jiu Jitsu. So at one point, I was doing both again, and I was able to devote enough attention to sharpen both skills and keep them pretty level. But at this time, I would say that my jiu-jitsu was way better than my striking was. Then of course, trying to balance things out and spend a little more on the striking, going to Thailand, and then actually I ended up leaving my gym, and it closed down after that, and I wanted to open my own school. I wasn't a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I felt competent enough in Muay Thai, and I asked my coach and my mentor if I could open a Muay Thai school, and he gave me his blessing, so I went ahead and did that. So of course, opening a Muay Thai school, I had to be very, very sharp on teaching those techniques and that style of martial arts. So I actually kind of had to step further and further away from my jiu-jitsu for a while and really put, like, I'd say 70%, if not 80% of my time into my striking and 20% of my time into my grappling. In another video, I'll put the card up here, I explain my path to my black belt. And there was an accident and I had to step away from jiu-jitsu altogether for a little bit. During that time, I was able to keep training my striking, so I stayed with that. So again, that skill just got sharpened and sharpened more and more. Then I was able to come back into my jiu-jitsu. I missed it. I wanted to hone it. I wanted to start, again, ranking up in my belts and all that stuff. So I was able to devote time back into my jiu-jitsu. And then it was maybe 60-40. Eventually, I got to a 50-50 point again, where half of my time training was specifically for striking, and then half of my time training was specifically for jiu-jitsu. So that's my story, okay? Now, why should you train Muay Thai and jiu-jitsu? Or, I saw a video that said boxing and wrestling. Look, I truly believe that you should learn striking and ground fighting. That's the simplicity of it. Now, you can definitely focus on one for a while before bringing another one into your world, because it is a lot of information, especially if you're starting from zero. But you can also do both if you can devote the time to really learn. Just understand you may not move or excel or progress as fast as the other people who are only focusing on one skill or the other. But that you have to just be okay with that. And if you love doing them both, I say do them both. So again, it could be where you do one for a while and then bring the other one on, or you could do both at the same time. I think that either way, you should have both. Again, I just feel it's important to know striking and to know ground fighting. From a personal growth perspective, from a self-defense perspective, for whatever reason you are training martial arts, it's just important because every fight starts on the feet. Most fights inevitably end up on the ground. And then just the confidence you gain from knowing that you're good wherever a fight goes. Now, if you choose to train in both disciplines at the same time, or even if you bring one in later on, regardless, if you're training in both at the same time, just be patient. That's number one. Be patient. Just be willing to absorb whatever you can, especially if you're doing 2 or 3 classes a night, you're taking in a lot of information. So don't worry if you're not getting it all. You just have to be patient because you are doing something that's way beyond what other people do. There's people, again, who are specifically out there just doing jiu-jitsu, and every bit of their mind goes into what they're being taught in that framework. And then there's people who only do the striking. They go to a boxing gym, they go to a Muay Thai boxing gym, they go to a kickboxing gym, whatever striking discipline they're doing, and all their efforts are in that framework. But now you have chosen to basically scatter your focus a little bit between 2 different things, and it could be overwhelming, but just absorb it and just accept it. Just be okay with all the information coming in and all the little bits of it that you could grasp. Know this, as you progress, it will get better and the little pieces will continue to come at you. With both disciplines, guys, it is a recurring curriculum. Whatever is covered at one point, it will be covered again. But you just have to be consistent, so that's another thing. So be patient and be consistent. If you keep ducking in and out of one or the other, then of course something fails. Even if you're just doing one of the disciplines and you're ducking in and out, you're just not going to progress as in the way I would imagine that you want to, or really you're just not going to progress well at all. On the other side of that, if you're doing multiple disciplines and you're shifting back and forth and letting this one fall while this, then no, just acknowledge which one may suffer. And hopefully if one is suffering, the other one is really growing by leaps. And then of course going back and filling the gaps on the other side. And if that's the way you want to go about it, that's fine too. And there may come a point where you truly fall in love with one over the other to where you decide, wholeheartedly just to abandon one completely and really focus on the other. That's okay as well, because again, as long as you're training, that's the best part. And that's the most important thing. As far as being an instructor that teaches multiple disciplines, that can be very difficult as well, because you're not only just training in multiple disciplines, you have to stay sharp with them. You have to understand all the techniques, new and old, because as you progress and pick up new techniques and advance your skills, you tend to forget or lose old skills that you have to go back and bring back out of your toolbox and sharpen. And you just got to stay on top of things. So on top of anything else, you got to stay sharp in your training. You got to stay sharp in your knowledge. And then you also have to stay sharp as far as presenting that information to your students. And that's what I have to do on a regular basis. So this video is not about recommending one of those styles over the other. I'm recommending that you do both. Because again, I'm saying in conclusion of this whole video that I believe everyone should have a striking style and learn ground fighting. I believe that would just create the best outcome for you in any scenario, whether it be fighting, sparring, self-defense. You just need to know how to handle yourself, again, in the two areas that a fight primarily will end up. It starts on the feet and it potentially will end up on the ground. So again, if you're thinking about getting started in martial arts, pick one that you really are really interested in. And I'm sorry if I couldn't give you one over the other, but that's just not how I see it. I think that you should consider multiple ones. And ultimately, I think you should find a gym or an academy that offers at least both, a striking style and a grappling art. Nowadays, there are some exclusive Brazilian Jiu Jitsu schools that are exclusively Jiu Jitsu. I guess not nowadays, there always have been those, but a lot of grappling schools do offer some form of striking. So I would suggest that that's what you find. And ensure that the instructor is proficient in both. He's not a professor in Jiu Jitsu and knows a little bit about striking, or he's a great striker or crew in Muay Thai, but is not very good at Jiu Jitsu. I know it'll be hard to tell at first, and honestly, just get in there and start training and just enjoy the training. But eventually, depending on, again, if you want one over the other or if you want to be really good at both, just ensure that the instruction that you're getting is at the level that you expect or desire. Okay, guys. Again, thank you for your support. I appreciate you guys watching the videos. Please be sure to like and subscribe so we can keep this thing going. Okay? Remember, keep fighting for fit, no excuses, and we'll see you in the next video.